sometimes you still have to print something off and sign it and fucking send it and whatever. So countries will adopt it and then they'll push it down.
I'm a huge believer on credit. The ecosystem has been playing around with that traditional investors know pretty well.
I will be selling stablecoins.
Yes.
You'll be selling stablecoins.
Hey guys, this segment we're going to be talking about the asset classes that we believe are going to be disrupting this ecosystem the most. So I'm here with Brian, one of the co-founders of Defactor, and with Sharif, another of the co-founders of Defactor, and myself, Alejandro, another co-founder of Defactor. So, Brian, I would like to know which is the asset class that you believe is going to be disrupting the real world assets narrative next.
Yeah, so I suppose everything eventually will get tokenized, but to start off, where do I see it? I think we have stablecoins, and with the new laws coming in, not just in the EU, but Hong Kong, Singapore, and everything else, I think you're going to have lots of different flavors of stablecoin coming along, and you already have a proven use case with dollars. So that's definitely one. Then we're going to have, I think, niche kind of community-based things. We have wine and other, niches where you have enthusiasts who want to get exposure to some assets. And then I think we're going to continue to see people experimenting with property, and eventually something will work.
Fantastic. So can I ask you a question, right? Yeah. In regards to the stable coins, because that's a hot topic at the moment, right? But do you see any real scalability on the stable coins at the moment, right? Especially because now, well, in Europe, as it is, like at that, the asset-backed tokens, right, as they are defined by MiCA, that set up a huge constraint, right, for scaling this type of assets, right?
It's a double-edged sword. It sets up constraints, but it also sets a playing field for creating an asset that we all talk about institutional adoption and things like that. If you have an asset that fits within the MiCA framework, it's a regulated asset in Europe and people can be comfortable using it. So yes, you're constrained, but on the flip side, you have the ability to get it out in a trusted way.
Fantastic. Sharif, what about
you? So I think I agree that it's going to be stable coins, or what they're calling flat coins now, or asset-backed coins.
All sorts of names.
All sorts of names. So, people are backing coins now with ETFs. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's $400 billion worth of US treasuries that is now tokenized. So all of a sudden, as soon as there was positive interest rates on financial instruments that are digital and can be tokenized, and you can kind of drill down and see who owns them, huge demand for them, and those assets then can be moved around the world. I saw a marketing company talking about the speed of now, so they're able to move around frictionless, and I think that's what's really interesting and important, and I think that's going to be a driver. Obviously, property, people have been talking about it for ages. It's expensive to buy a house. How do you get a foot in the ladder? Tokenization gives you a chance to do that. And I'm also interested in other stuff, tokenization of precious metals. We've got, the first user of Defactor pools, that they've got tokenization of gold. They've got, custodians all around the world that are, custodying the gold in a secure way, creating a digital token that can be traded 24/7 on exchanges all around the world. So I think we're going to see more and more of that, as long as the trust is there in the counterparty.
So on my side, I think I'm a huge believer on credit. I think credit is one of the things that the ecosystem has been playing around with, that understands pretty well, that traditional investors know pretty well, and they are actually already backing. So for me, I think that's going to be the biggest disruptor, and probably we're going to be seeing more of these platforms like Centrifuge, like Maple, like Defactor, Goldfinch, and so on, growing potentially next year. Like that's what I believe. Also, I believe anything that is related to tokenizing assets in supply chains. I think that's going to be picking up. Probably it's not going to be one of the big hits in the crypto space. However, in the industry, it's going to be a dramatic change on how supply chains are managed. Because when you are actually just having these virtual or these phygital assets just running across your whole supply chain.
Digital.
Digital.
Is that the new thing? Oh, yeah,
It's a new thing.
that's
So
new
it's
to me,
like
okay.
is that when you have that mix between the physical and digital entity, so you are putting to run that into a whole supply chain, into like a twin, a digital twin, for visibility purposes, traceability, and so on. I believe that is going to just have a huge impact in supply chains as we know them right now.
And I think all of them are going to mix together.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
But I think that's what it is. I mean, we talk about tokenization and creating these tokens as representation, but it's digitizing these things, and then being able to move assets or title around just the same way as you can do it in an attachment of an email is essentially what all of this is. Is the world going to be more digital in 3 years' time? Absolutely. Are we going to be still walking into a solicitor's office or a notary or whatever, having to stamp and sign and stuff? No, eventually that's going to go away, and it's going to go away everywhere.
Well, that's the plan, and let's hope that's where we're heading. Right?
I'm an e-resident in Estonia, and I've had a company there for years. Everything is signed with a card and a PIN, and has been for years. And here, even Ireland, it's not as backward as some places, but sometimes you still have to print something off and sign it and fucking send it and whatever. So, countries will adopt it, and then they'll push it down, and institutions will adopt it and they push it down, and people will demand it.
That will help the whole tokenization effort across multiple places. Like, maybe notaries don't need to disappear, but they need to
sign
embrace
on
technologies,
exactly,
and that you can show that something perhaps has been notarized by how it appears on chain, and it's part of this trust piece. We have to embrace the best of the old and the new, and slowly but surely, bit by bit, it's all getting done. And I think property is a great example of that. At the end of the day, in most countries, you're still going property deeds and old dusty pieces of paper and things like this. And ultimately, that's worked for a long time, but is that the way that we want to see it in 100 years' time? Or do we want to look at how these new technologies enable you to have that trust on chain? Prove that as something that is an ownership of it, and then allows you to deal with it and use it and utilize that asset in different ways.
Correct. Like, I think similar to that, you have bill of ladings. That is a really good use case. You have like a document that represents the title of goods for when you are sending a container, or when you send goods in an ocean vessel, and that has been really not changed for the last 400 years, right? And one of the main reasons behind is, well, because by law, that document cannot be changed, right?
Yeah.
So like that
until it can.
until it can, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the technology now is ready. Like, you have detailed bill of ladings right now, and now with UK allowing or changing now the detailed ownership law, which means that basically these digital goods are going to have exactly the same legal value as the physical document. Then it's going to be changing the whole and disrupting the whole international commerce as we have.
And as soon as they have a confidence that it works, it won't just be allowed or adopted, it'll be enforced.
Correct.
It'll be the only way you'll be able to do it. You'll have to apply to these standards, and you'll have to use these systems, and otherwise your goods won't be allowed in.
And then you have one jurisdiction that is doing this, and then that
the larger one
largest one are going to just push it.
Well, we're going to start with the niche cases. I think we're going to have the pioneers looking to get these things done, and I think that's who we're looking for in Defactor. We're looking for people who want to pioneer this. We want to.
So, Brian, you have been working with rights, with music rights, and I think that will be. You can give us a little bit of flavor on that space as well.
Well, music and music rights, similar to some of the other assets we have, are very ancient kind of pieces of intellectual property, but they are increasingly digital. But the way that the digital piece interacts with the non-digital piece at the moment is very clunky. You have, say, streams on Spotify, and then you have the ability for people to get paid out of that. There's a disconnect. You have all sorts of, we'll call it, old, clunky pieces of rights bundled together with new tech that it's oil and water. Slowly but surely, you can tokenize each piece of how that music rights kind of infrastructure works. It'll take a long time, because the way music works is I can write it, you can record it, you can mix it, the next fella samples it.
Ed Sheeran records it. Yeah.
And all of that has to get captured. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it's definitely going to happen. And in the meantime, I think we're going to have, in the music industry, experiments and pioneering kind of attempts to make music into these new assets, print them into NFTs. We have everything from, we call it traditional NFTs and ordinals that are out there already. And we have various other kind of attempts to look at, say, streaming rights and things like this, and look to say, okay, if I can take my streaming rights, I can lock them in a Defactor pool. How is it that maybe I can enhance how we finance things and maybe pay for tours and other
Studios
parts
or
of
equipment.
It will change
whatever.
completely the way that working capital actually
Precisely.
is looked at in the music industry, because that's one of the main issues, especially for indie artists, right? And when you are a big label behind you, that's fine, right? But if you don't have that, it gets really tricky.
We did an NFT release for a rapper. It's probably 3.5 years ago now, right when NFTs were kind of just starting. And through a small network, he sold multiple $1,000s worth of revenue for his NFT collection. He came up with the art and he shipped it out and sold it. And what we heard back from the artist is that was more money than he'd ever made on streaming at that point in time. And he's gone on. He's done more in the future, but it's just. What I think is going to happen is some of these artists are going to demand it. They're just, they're going to say, no, I want my rights digitized. I want my payments streamed. I want to be interfacing this platform, and Apple Music will have to do it, and Spotify, whatever.
It'll greatly increase the transparency and the speed of payment.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the demand is going to come from.
That's where the demand will come from. Exactly. People are not going to sit around and say, where's my money?
I think the point you make about income is well made. With token tracks, which I'm involved in as well, you have Tommy Danvers involved there, and he's the man with all the stats in this. But it's remarkable how few artists today can survive on just the rights that they have. They're dependent on merch and touring and everything else, and also that whole connection with fans has been eroded a little bit. Like Spotify and everything is fantastic for getting the music out there and consumption, but you lose that connection with the artist a little bit. So there's a whole. It's the rights, it's the incomes, it's the connections. It's a very fruitful place to quarry.
Brian, thank you very much. I think it was fantastic just to get your thoughts on where or what asset classes are going to be the next big hit for the RWAs. And Sanctuary, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure. I will be selling you stablecoins.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll be selling stablecoins.
This podcast is for information purposes only and should not be considered as financial advice. Please do your own research